Nein, nein, das ist sogar ausgedruckt. Dankeschön.
So hello everyone and welcome to this panel on the topic militarization of the external EU borders and racist colonial asylum politics. My name is Rufin Songi. I am a journalist and a media educator. But also, and most important today, I am going to moderate this panel. I'm not doing it alone. I am here together with Rebecca Renz. Hi, Rebecca.
Hi, also welcome from my side. I'm Rebecca Renz, also part of the curatorium as Rufines of Dear White People. And we're really happy this podium took place and is taking place today. So, first of all, a few informations on how we're going to hold this conference, this festival, and this podium. So, there is a awareness team present at the festival from over the whole weekend, and any person that is feeling the need to talk about the experience that they're making can contact them. They have a stand outside of the theater, and there's a BIPOC safer space in the theater too, where BIPOCs can connect and exchange thoughts as well. In the Kammerbühne, that's where you find it. All right.
So it's also important for us, it will be important to take questions after this panel. We will first talk to the panelists, but then after that we will have questions from the audiences. But some question will be, the first question that we will take will be from Flinter and BIPOC first. You can also wait a short time until several persons dare to speak, and do not speak, we will always wait and wait first and take the question from the BIPOC and the Flinter person. But then if nobody wants to speak, then first then we will take the question from all. Lastly, we would like to remind you that there is an awareness team, as Rebecca said already, and a safer space. Before we take the whole space here, let us introduce our guests. So on this panel today, we have Doris Dede. Doris, you are originally from Kenya, but you have been living in Germany since 2017. You work as an empowerment trainer in the field of refugee and asylum, and among others at the self-organized organization Women in Exile, an initiative of refugee women who came together to fight for their rights. Doris, welcome, and thank you for being here today. Please, can we make a round of applause for Doris Dede?
Also with us on the panel today is Dimitra Dermitzaki, who is a political scientist and has studied political science and ethnology at George August University in Göttingen, California State University, Los Angeles, and Freie Uni Berlin. Her research focused on migration, asylum, and the European migration and border regime, as well as gendered aspects of migration and division of labor, as well as the colonial approaches. Welcome to the podium.
Another guest is today online. You can see him here on the screen. This is Charaf Zerzar. He's working with Wave Thessaloniki, and he's also doing translation for Border Violence Monitoring Network. He left his home country, Algeria, at 18 and went through asylum system in Greece. That's why he's also an expert in this topic. He's also now working in this field. With his lived experience, he raises awareness on the issue with regular media appearances, workshops, and training sessions. Charaf, we are glad to have you here today.
And last but not least, our second member of Women in Exile is Grace Ngángá. And she lived in Germany as a refugee woman. She understands the struggles this status brings and therefore started to get active in order to support other women in this struggle. She wants to bring the fights of refugees to light and claim that refugees are here to stay. Welcome, Grace. So we're talking today about a really big topic. Let's see how we get it into these 2 hours, or less even so. Europe. Europe is a concept that some people imagined at some point, hoping it to become a peacemaker. Europe, the European Union, is an idea of a post-national union that tries to manifest freedom through the monetary union, through the European Court of Human Rights. However, as history told us, its institutions and boards enforce authoritarian policies against population of conflict-driven countries through their neoliberal politics. At external borders and beyond even, the EU functions as a catalyst for a deadly border regime. Its reactions to, for example, the uprising in North Africa in 2011, demands and cries for freedom at that time were responded with the expansion and of Frontex and the further militarization of its borders. So we do have to frame, without wanting it to give too much space here right at the beginning, it is important to face it, that it is a colonial construct, since its self-image that was fed by the Enlightenment theory and human rights, so to say, is itself, the meaning of it and the development of it is interdependent with the history of colonization, and it's still wearing consequences our global community has to face. Therefore, we do have to, come back to what we're actually talking about, since migration has been there since the beginning of time, basically. And the history of Europe, the history of migration and European asylum and migration policies brings us to the topic of borders and back to the topic of today, which is the militarization of EU borders and colonial asylum politics. So borders, what are borders? Doris, our first question goes to you. How would you, do you understand when hearing the word borders?
Yeah, well, thank you for the question. I'll start to say, basically, what I understand with the borders first is an obstacle that, either separates or prevents something either to move freely or just a movement, or even hinders like access to something. So this for me means like border or like a boundary. And I'll also say that with this even hindrance, as far as the boundary I've just said as to my understanding is that cuts off, which I said again, the separation, like a bridge that also doesn't allow a continuation or a connection of something or somebody. So this is what I would say I understand as the term borders.
Thank you, Doris. You just talked, you brought up one word which was a continuation. The border doesn't allow continuation. From Rebecca's introduction, we also heard that borders is a kind of continuation of colonialism. Dimitria, my question was go to you also, the same question. What do borders really have to do with the continuity of colonialism? What are borders in relation to imperialism?
Thanks a lot. It's a very interesting and important question, especially the subject of, the description of it as imperialist. So I would say that first of all, I would agree with Doris on that part, but also raise like more of a rhetorical question that we first have to define, obviously, what exactly we mean by border, because there are different types of it, and it depends on the situation, the historic or time framework. So bodily autonomy that is restricted is also a certain border that is crossed or not crossed, or economic borders, or borders concerning health issues. So when we speak about borders in this subject, about the European migration and asylum system, obviously it's a physical border, and it's relevant in this context to dig a little bit deeper into the meaning of basically what the idea behind a border was originally, and it was to protect a state, and protect is like more the questionable part in it, to protect a state, a certain territory, and what's in it from the outside. And the idea is already a little bit leaning to what Rebecca already mentioned about an imagined community. So the EU is something imagined, and states, or further also nation states, are similar to that they were imagined communities of a homogeneous group of people with the same culture, same religion, same roots, same ethnicity, and so on, living in one territory. And this model, you can say, is quite new, because for millennia, people used to live in empires or in rather undefined structures. So states actually developed around like 500, 600 years ago. So it's quite new, and also one of the important parts to develop a nation state was, as mentioned, the idea of an imagined community, but also the development of statistics, because only then you could count how many people living in one territory, how many, like which gender are they assigned, which age, which group, like what group do they belong to, either in terms of religion or labor. So to come back to the original question about the imperialist part, is that the interesting part in the EU, and I think also it's important to make the division between EU as a let's say a political construct and Europe as a continent, because it's also not exactly the same, and the divisions over time have been also different. So what do we mean about Europe, which countries do belong there as a continent, and also historically did belong and did not belong, and who does belong to the EU for what reason, and usually it's economic reasons. And when we look into the architects of the original EU in the post-World War II era, it was today's Great Britain, France, and then Germany, West Germany, who are, to say coincidentally, all three of them one of the big major imperialist countries in the world right now, and also colonial powers. So Spain was not in it in the beginning, at least. in the architecture beginning of the EU, but still plays a major role. So you can see that this externalization and also the European integration of other countries more to the east, so Southeast European countries into this political concept of the EU was like basically an externalization and also enlargement of this imperialist tactic and also to spread capitalism.
Thank you, Dimitra. It is complex, as we all noticed, if we haven't noticed before. So, Grace, the concept of borders, we heard about the history and its political meaning. What does it do as a system that people feel and experience in real life with their bodies at borders? What do you say? What comes to mind when you hear the word borders?
Hello, everyone. And for me, when I hear the terms borders, I think of isolation, like what I went through. I have been here since February 2016, and I was living in the lager once, and it's not an easy task, as it's not easy to survive there. Like it's always like you have everything shared, like shared accommodation, where it's a small room, like you have to share 4 women, and some they have babies, so it's not easy. So like you don't have the privacy. And also like a shared toilet in some lagers. We don't have like a toilet for women and for men. So like you have to share. So it's not easy like to shower. So you don't know even who is showering when you are outside there. So you are not safe. And also it's not easy like to go to the toilet at night because you don't know what can happen. So you are vulnerable to all risk, from rape to everything. And also like the kitchen, it also shared accommodation where like we have like 20 people sharing like two cookers. It's not easy. You don't cook the way you feel like. You have to wait for some people to finish so that you can do your things. Or you have to wake up very early so that you can cook before everyone wakes up. Or you decide to do it later when everyone is done. That's my experience, or that's my meaning of border. Like, yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Grace. You just raised the point of like personal borders and the borders which are set for people living in camps.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the experience, the border that people face daily life in camps here in Germany. Yeah.
Charaf, you also have experienced personally borders, like Grace also. You've left your country, like we said before, with the age of 18. You lived in Greece, for example. You also experienced it there. But also you know more about borders now also, where you are a member of, you work with Border Violence Monitoring Network. What would you say, what do you see that, what did you experience in your body? How did you experience borders? And how do you experience it now as someone who is engaged and activist in this organization?
So, hello everybody, and thanks for attending this conference. The first thing comes to my mind when I hear the term borders is likely deaths. So like it calls the death of innocent and vulnerable people in the border. Like let's talk like about Evros, for example. I know so many people, and they like every time I hear about people who are dying there, like just vulnerable, innocent people, like wherever the reasons for leaving their homeland, it's just not fair what's happening to them. And borders in general are like the main supportive thing of racism and nationalism and so many things like imperialism. And it's all structured and designed to divide people, and it would never connect them. These borders made it easy for the colonizer to control their colonies, which is the one who made borders in the first place.
Thank you, Charaf. You know, it is really interesting because before, Dimitra, as you talked about the borders and you introduced it, you said it was actually set for protecting people. And now, from what Charaf just raised, he brought up what's like repression. He brought up what's like violence. He brought up like, we think about like the pushbacks. Especially, for example, pushbacks at the EU borders, between EU-Turkey borders. And I know that you wrote your master thesis on the topic, you examined the EU-Turkey action plan in the context of European migration and border policies from a materialist and hegemony critical theoretical approach. Maybe you will first say, what is exactly this EU action plan? And then maybe explain to us how did you conduct the study and what did you come up with?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I just wanted to add one small thing. When I said earlier protection, I was speaking theoretically because obviously it's not a protection, or at least not for everyone. So we always also have to look at this certain project when people say it's like part of security politics, security for whom and security for whom not. And as we obviously see, there's always another side of certain political measures. But to come back to the question about my research, so generally speaking, to summarize it a little bit for the ones who are not familiar with it, the EU-Turkey plan, which is not an agreement because it's not legally binding. It's a kind of a plan similar to a business plan, which was basically agreed upon in March of 2016 after months of negotiations following the so-called Summer of Migration in 2015. As a lot of you might have also witnessed and followed, or even maybe you volunteered in some place or you experienced it yourself. So it was the situation that many refugees came over the Mediterranean route, so the so-called Balkan route, over Turkey, over the East Mediterranean, and then into European ground through Greece as a member of the European Union. And then the interior politics were kind of tense in a lot of other member states in how to handle the situation. And then there was this idea to just say it plain and simply, how do we keep refugees, and in this period it was mostly Syrians, people from Syria, how do we keep them outside? So of course nobody framed it in this way, but the result of the agreement was to have this, to give basically Turkey a lot of money and like billions in the end to hold back migrants from traveling to the EU, and in exchange other certain migrants and asylum seekers who are already on Turkish ground and have some access into registering, which is also very difficult because it's not easy to register from another country for another country that you want to migrate. So from abroad basically, and then relocate those people. So basically make an exchange of population. So people who already had arrived before March 2016 in European territory, to send them back to Turkey, and then others to relocate them from Turkey into the European ground, which doesn't make really sense. people should just stay where they are, and then the ones who want to travel further be given the permission. And now it's 5 years later, and the result is that, in fact, the wish of the European leaders, actually, European Union leaders, actually, came into practice, because there are less refugees and asylum seekers coming through the Eastern Mediterranean route, but this is also a lot of other reasons. So it's basically portrayed as like a success for holding back refugees, but the other reasons reflecting upon why that is, and maybe because also other states like Italy or Spain are also closing borders and are being more aggressive in the Mediterranean, also through Frontex and other policing measures, is completely left out. So this was the action plan, basically, and it's still put into practice, but there is not enough money to take care of the other refugees that have been or are planned to be relocated into Turkey. And basically, to summarize it shortly, so we can come back to other topics and questions, my research basically showed in our research of like a discourse analysis and archive analysis of the past 70 years of European asylum and migration policy, that basically it's always an extension to the outside. So what we see today as a joint European asylum and migration policy started as the so-called Gastarbeiter regime in Germany, which was like a migration regime to control the labor migrants from Southeast European countries, including Morocco and Turkey, to work in Germany and then to send them back later. And this all resulted basically into this, into the extension of a joint asylum and migration policy for the entire EU or the member states, following their integration into the EU, because not all the countries were member of the EU in like 50 years ago. And now the result is that basically all countries where the majority of natural resources in the world are located, which is outside of Europe. More than 90% are in Africa, in Asia, in South America, are being, basically the natural resources exist there and goods are produced there, but the accumulation of those products takes place in places such as Europe, North America, Australia, and other capitalist countries. And this is also not only a division in terms of migration and what people, as we already heard, experience day by day, but also the wealth is not distributed equally, which is also a continuation of what had happened prior through colonization, imperialism, and slavery. Sorry, it took so long.
What Dimitra just cut down in a few minutes, a history of many years, brings us back to the situation of having borders on continents on the border of the European Union that are being increasingly militarized and deadly, which is a colonial continuity of these inhumane practices of hierarchies of European hegemony. And this brings us back to the necessity of documenting pushbacks at those borders, and brings us back to EU Charaf, to the Border Violence Monitoring Network, which documents cases of pushbacks and police violence inflicted by EU member states on these named borders. Would you please describe how these pushbacks are being perpetrated? And I believe you wanted to add something to your answer before. In that case, you can talk now. We can't hear you right now.
Yeah, I wanted to say just about like the borders thing is not the same because, for example, back home, my home country, like they weren't the ones who made the borders. The French colonizer is the one who made borders, and it it still exists until now, which is they're like happy with it. It's still the shape that they wanted always to be, and it's easier for them until now to benefit from this structure of order that they wanted. And you asked me about the pushbacks and how pushbacks are happening, yeah?
Yes.
So usually when I learn about a pushback, or one of my colleagues tells me that somebody gets pushback, I talk to them first. I see if they need a medical assistance or food and water, see if they seem in a good condition, even like without asking them, because if they seem in not a good condition, you just don't ask them about doing an interview if they're not in a mental health, a good mental health or physical, good physical condition. You would never tell them or ask them about that, because like their condition come first. It's like our priority is safety of people. Then if they don't have those things, I ask them if they would be okay to talk about their experiences. If it's okay to ask them about their experience, then I introduce myself, introduce what BVMN does and what is it about. Like and I go through all the things that they should know about BVMNs, about me, about like my colleagues. If they give their consent, we go on. If they give their consent, I ask my colleagues, and we do the introduction again, just to make sure we double check. One of my colleagues will do the introduction, and they will just interpret it. Then we start asking questions, and in the end, we have something that we can use against these actions, against pushbacks and against violence, police violence.
Charaf, thank you. I would like to know a bit more about what you do next then? You said you try to find out what you can do. Maybe there's a concrete thing that you've already done after that. How do you get against that? How do you support the people after these interviews?
So like to be just like
Charaf, I'm sorry to interrupt. Could you hold your microphone a bit closer to your mouth? Please,
okay,
thank
sorry.
you.
Thanks.
Yeah.
So sometimes you could do nothing. If those people are really affected from this pushback, you would just stop the interview. There's like limited ways to support them.
Thank you, Charaf. Sorry, I will come back to you again with another question. Is the organization Border Violence Monitoring Network has been documenting this pushback since 2016. And how has it evolved? How is the frequency now since from 2016 to now?
So I think I haven't been like with BVMN since that time, but I can tell you a bit, like since I started working with BVMN, like that's what I can talk about, because I haven't been like from 2016 with BVMN.
Talking about your work as an activist with Border Violence Network, there are many agents and organizations working at the external EU borders, but also in the countries people are entering and living in Europe. So if we talk, for example, about the activities women in exile are organizing here in Germany, one of your last activities was Women in Exile Breaking the Borders. And it went to different towns throughout Germany, and Women in Exile was holding workshops and speeches. But what mostly is that what got most attention is that you organized a march that at the end of which you crossed the border between Germany and another country. Would you like to tell us more about this, Doris?
Yeah, we crossed, the border was between Germany and Switzerland, so it was Basel. And at that time, so it was one of our summer national action. So it was a bus tour, which the theme was Women Breaking Borders. And prior to what I'd said, how I understood and even what Grace shared with the term borders, we had seen that, through the experience of, could have been maybe the 2016, which it was our kind of first bus tour, and our experience with the other refugee women, we saw that they were lacking this kind of participation, and it was because of these, the borders that they couldn't. They were separated from the society, so they didn't have access to even the basic thing. Although even Germany say that refugees should integrate, so they didn't have access to the German classes and the most fundamental basic thing, health, living alone, living in the lager, so no housing, no work permit. So with this, and even from the protagonist, the experience which they had made was that, as women, they were, being double discriminated, not just from their gender as women, but also but from the discriminative refugee laws. So they decided that, okay, that of course being one of them, but during this tour was that the system, the German system, had in a way not separated, but categorized the refugees, that some are better than the others, meaning even among the refugees, so there was some thinking they are more privileged than the others. And so our main focus was, during this empowerment, as you said, was, sitting together and having, serious discussion, that saying that, for instance, the people leaving their countries or fleeing their countries had a reason. And once you are in the country, for example, Germany, you have the same fight, so you are categorized, you are put in one, bucket. So no one, during these mass deportations that we see, it will not be a point that, okay, you are from, I don't know, economic-based country and you are from a war zone. So our focus with this empowerment was that the struggles are, of course, real, and if we divide ourselves, then we will not be able to fight well. So we need to, fight together and, of course, leave no one behind. So this was one point.
What you just said is the buzzword, leave no one behind and fight in solidarity, since the struggles and the fights are the same and have to be fought together in order to be won, basically. And that's why different organizations, for example, like Women in Exile, are standing in solidarity with fugitives, with refugees, and organizing protests in different forms, especially last year when the Camp Moria was burned down. There was a big outcry in national media, international media even, on as it is from both sides, for calls for abolishing the camp, and others for a further militarization and precariation of the situation. That's why I would ask you, Grace, since Women in Exile are working on the topic of camps like Moria, what are the possibilities organizations have to stand in solidarity to work against these systemic and structural problems and policies in order to abolish camps?
Thank you. When we come to this point about the Camp Moria, and like we compare it with our work, Women in Exile, the fight is still the same. This is why we came about with this concept, no lager for women and children, because we don't have the privacy, and this is also what's happening there. People live in isolations, and the deportation, no better health care, in most cases, through living these conditions, we find that most of the women, they are suffering, but quietly. And we came to realize most of the women in our group, they are suffering from pneumonia and cysts because of going through all these. And also they don't have an open space where they can talk about their problem. And also language is another barrier where most of the women, they don't speak German. And also it's not easy to express themselves in a language which one can understand, because most of the time when you go to these where you're supposed to get the help, they will always address you in German. So, and also sometimes you find that you are not given chance, or you are not given information in the light language which you can understand. And we find that a certain woman came in our group, and she was in this first camp at Eisenhüttenstadt. This is where the refugee women, or the refugee register in Brandenburg. And when she was there, she has a problem, and the gynecologist there told her that her uterus has to be removed, but she was not told much. And then she came into our group when she was crying, and she was looking for our help. And then we had to intervene, and we told her we have to look for a second option. We sent her to a second gynecologist who gave another answer, said that it's not a must that the uterus has to be removed, but it can be operated. And you can take medicine after that, and everything went on well. Thank you.
Thank you, Grace. Women in Exile, as you just explained, support women in different ways. For example, so support women in the case of violence in camps, where women, Doris said before, that migrant women are facing a double discrimination, because one side they are marginalized as a women, discriminated as a women, but also because of the racist refugee system. And one of the cases that you were following, you have been following since years, is that of Rita. Rita was died. Can you maybe briefly speak about this case for those who maybe don't know a lot about Rita?
Yeah, Rita, the late Rita, we call her our sister because she went missing for more than 3 months, more than 3, but less than 4 months. And So her case first was reported that she's missing, and we were concerned because we knew her. She was like part also of our initiative, Women in Exile. And so we tried our tools of, how, for example, WhatsApp, or, just, passing to our fellow networks, like, have you seen, Rita? And because she had also two young kids, so we thought, like, this is bizarre. The kids cannot be, because they were found alone in the room, and she was staying in one of the camps in Hohenleipzig. It's in Brandenburg. So, long story short is that, the search went on what we had, and after now these 3 months, her remains were found actually not so far from the camp where she was staying. Like, was it 200 meters, Grace? Yeah, so we were really stricken that for 200 meters, surely how can you, because the police said or claimed that they had made their search like every day with the dogs and all that. But yeah, so we found this was not, of course, not proper, because we were asking ourselves if this could have been a white, maybe German woman gone missing. We don't think that the remains could have taken that long and without explanation. So that was first the story behind the late Rita, and of course, since then we were fighting for justice, asking for supporting her family from back home. She comes from Kenya, so you can imagine maybe her mom and all being devastated, not getting answers, like, so with our support and other, of course, organizations that support refugees and migrants, we were really pestering these questions and having also lawyers, and we work closely, with a good initiative called Offer Perspective, and they were also trying, to do their research. And then, unfortunately, when the pandemic came, so nothing was much being done. Like, okay, offices were closed. And then at the end, when things started, getting a little bit ease, where courts could open, of course, with appointments, they told the Offer Perspective, who told us that the case is going to be closed because they said they could not find enough evidence that, maybe she was murdered or something like this. And so, of course, we were really angry, and we demonstrated on the 8th of March this year in Cottbus, because that was also where her case was being held and still being held. So we were there to, shouting in front of the court that why we need answers. And so at this moment, because we were like, we want to start a campaign of no justice for Rita, but we couldn't go further. We're still working on it, obviously, because we didn't have enough information, so it was not going to be okay to start a campaign with inadequate information. And so we, thank goodness, we said now we'll work on our own, because we happen now to get in touch with our own contacts. A few women who know the late Rita closely, I think they had shared the rooms, so it seems she knows some information. And we're also lucky that we are working with a few journalists who are very interested with the case, and they want to work together with us now from a new start, so that we can now, dig to information we know, and not depending toward the case maybe the police were giving us. And it's just not only because of Rita, because we believe that, regarding the many testimonies we've had about, this sexual violence and other kind of violence, and even the women who are going missing. So it's not like Rita's case was the first, and this is why we just wanted to continue raising awareness that this should stop, and this kind of violence against women. Yeah.
Thank you for summarizing this. At the same time, this story stands as an example for many stories and a structural neglect of the safety of refugees. There's little interest structurally and from institutions to ensure security. And before we go into more detail of what organizations are doing in order to develop such concepts of safety, we want to talk about the possibilities of, for example, a project like monitoring and evaluation of the protection concept for refugees in accommodations. And what can be done? Dimitra, you are working on this currently.
Thank you for raising this question. I think it's also an important subject because, as we already heard, there are a lot of cases where people are going missing or are being even killed in refugee accommodations or around them. So it's and not only in Germany, also in other countries, but we are living right now in Germany, so we should address that. There was a project actually trying to develop a tool to monitor, basically to collect data on safety and unsafety in German refugee accommodations, which is not only like this term accommodation, there's not only one type of accommodation, there are different types. So especially in the ones where a lot of people are staying in overcrowded areas, and also that are really far away from any city or any like urban connection, and more rural areas, so where the access to support is also more restricted. So generally, I would say that it's a good idea or a good step to try to figure out, okay, how does violence happen there? What can we do against it? But I would actually not argue for it, to be honest. I would argue rather for there have to be an abolishment of any kind of these accommodations, and if you want to prevent any violence happening in there. So I will not stuck, to be honest. I know there are a lot of projects, a lot of ideas going on around that, and I don't want to diminish also other things that are other research or activist colleagues, to say so, or comrades are doing in that area. But in my experience, and also from what we have heard, and maybe Grace and Doris can also speak more about it, it doesn't make sense to try to change an oppressive system. We like within it, we have to abolish it. We have to get rid of refugee camps as they are, and give people another opportunity to live. And but one thing I can say in the research that we did was that most problems, along with other like issues, obviously the process of migration, a lot of things happen on the way, on the route. Many people experience violence, psychological trauma and pressure, and apart from that, which is already horrible, the main problem is to put people who don't know each other, who don't speak the same language, who have no idea of this country and the people around them, just in one room, and then let them stuck there forever, and no real access to education, to the education they need. Some have already studied and want just to get back into the workplace. They really want to do something, feel like this fire, and they can't. Or others have never went to school or university and want to start that, and they are again restricted in their option. And there are some, I don't want to diminish everything, there are some steps to try to change it. Also, offering language classes, because also, as we discussed already, language barrier is also one border, because if people cannot communicate, a lot of things can go wrong, especially in the health sector. But yeah, to summarize it, one of the biggest things that came out was people are in a lot in rural areas where there is no access to adequate health support, to doctors, to gendered doctors also, especially for women if they don't want to be treated by a man. Someone who speaks the language, and the transport, there's a lack of money, there's lack of, plays and toys for children, for school for both adults and children, and also there is a problem then of abuse of alcohol and drugs in the worst case, not always and not all, but also in the worst case, because obviously it's like a kind of a solution, a short-term solution to psychologically not dealing with the situation if there is no psychologist to support you or not other trauma support. So the argument basically is, and I'm looking forward to hearing more from you about it, to just get rid of this kind of lager, and they remind somehow of the prison industrial complex, to be honest, especially on the external borders. When we look at, you mentioned already Moria, which was built on the island of Mytilene, which was built as a refugee center, arrival center, I think for maximum 5,000 people, another 40,000 people living in it. So there is no way around it than just getting rid of it.
Getting rid of it, that's really your appeal. And this is also something that the women in exile are always shouting and always claiming. For example, you have your next action, which is called Women on the Roads Against Camp System and Racism. It will take place from 21st of July until the 4th of August. What can we imagine from this project? What is it, Grace? Would you maybe explain this, the project that is going to take place?
Oh, thank you. In Women in Exile, in every year we have a summer action, and since 2014, we have been having this. 2014, we had the last tour. This was by river. We went all over Germany, and we were visiting women in the camp, doing demonstration, doing rally, and giving workshop. And then come 2016, we had the first bus tour, and we also visited Laga, did peer education. We issued our problems in public through demo. And then come 2017, we had our conference, which happened in Berlin. And we invited around 300 women that we had networked from the first raft tour to the first bus tour. And we invited all of them in Berlin. And then we had this conference, and we connected from where we left. And then come 2018, we had the second bus tour. This one we concentrated in southern Germany. And why we went to southern Germany, because this is the time we had this anchor centrum, especially in Munich. And we went there, we did the demo, and we came up here to Freiburg. Also, we went up to Basel, and we crossed the border up to the other side of Switzerland. And we had this Krima game during that time. So it was very nice doing this Krima game with people on Switzerland side, and us, we were on the German side. And come 2019, we had the Building Bridges initiative, which was at Oplats. And we also invited all those people we met during the raft tour, the first bus tour, the conference, all of them. We met again in Berlin, and it was a very nice experience meeting, and now learning from these women now that they are empowered, and now we shared, and now they were showing us how they are empowered, and this really moved us. Then came 2020. We did not have any action because of the lockdown. But this is not stop us. We still continued to fight, but we did it online, although it was not easy, but at least we managed. Then comes 2021. From 21st July to 4th August, we are heading northern Germany. These include Hamburg, Bremen, Rostock, Kiel, Schwerin. This is where we are going to go. And our action will be like to empower the women there. We will give them workshop and visit them in the lager to know the problem which they are going through. We can learn from them, and also they are going to learn from us what we know, and also what they don't know, they will also learn it. And also we have also invited women from the other parts whom we have met during the first and the second and the first tour. All of us, we are going to meet in Mecklenburg-Vorpommern. And we are expecting it also like to be very good and also to be very educative. During the 8th of March, during our demo in Cottbus, we also came to learn or to see women in somewhere, I think in Bremen. During their demo on 8th of March, they were demonstrating because at the outside the Ausländer Behold the office in Bremen, because the government has refused to give them the birth certificates of their children. So this is one of the reasons why we are going there, because we want to go there, demonstrate or do the rally or do any action which will make these people give these children their rights. According to the UN, it really doesn't matter where you are born. You have the rights to have a birth certificate. This is one of the reasons why we are heading north. And also we want to empower women there to become politically active and in order to fight for their rights as women, as they are doubly discriminated by this refugee racist rule. Thank you.
Thank you, Grace. Please, I was so moved by what you were saying. That's why I would like the audience here to give a round of applause for what the women in exile are doing. Empowering the people. And this is a phenomenon you've been going through this system yourself. And then you stand up and decide to fight for the rights of the others. And then you decide to empower the others to also fight for their rights. This is also what you're doing, Charaf. You've also went through this system. You are also now doing empowering people. How would you say that this system has changed? Has it even changed? This is also the question that we always ask. Has this system, this refugee system, changed since you were in till now that you are empowering people?
I mean, the first time when I applied for asylum, it was like less worse than now. Now, if someone wants to apply for asylum or go to the asylum office, it's so hard. They need to get an appointment, which it will take months to get this appointment. And if they want just to apply for asylum, they have just 1 hour per week to call through Skype, and it's quite rare for them to pick up the phone. I know some people who are calling, trying for like over a year now, and they couldn't reach out anyone. So I would say we are trying to do like what we could do for the situation, but I don't see like really a changement or like improve. I don't see it. I really don't see it. Especially in this situation now, they are pushing every time people back to Turkey, and like this place used to be always a safe place, and even now everyone knows that Thessaloniki and is a safe place to stay, and making applying for asylum for people hard, make them undocumented, and being undocumented would be like something that they could be pushed back anytime. Like when you are undocumented, you could be pushed back anytime. You just keep it in mind.
Could you talk more about this process of the illegalization of refugees, of migrants coming to Europe, not enabling them to make use of their rights?
Yeah, it's literally the right of everyone to ask for asylum, but the thing, the procedure they are making, like the procedure harder. It's literally not really clear, because people are like the whole time calling. They have just 1 hour a week. This is like the only chance that they have to ask for asylum. And even here, lawyers, they are exploiting people. Like they are promising people to get them this thing which is called white card, which is their asylum seekers. Just to ask for asylum, you need to pay a lawyer, and there are so many people who exploit the situation and take over the chance to make money.
Dimitra, you've did your researches on this system, about this system. From your perspective, maybe I would also like to know how do you see the evolvement, the development of this system, this migration system, this asylum procedures?
That's a hard question. To be honest, for now at least, I don't really see like a huge change in a direction that supports refugees. I see it actually getting worse, which is reflected through the so-called migration agreement from last year, from 2020, I think September 2020, where basically main EU member actors agreed to kind of change this Dublin procedure of, where a refugee has to apply for asylum in the country, in the European member country that he or she or they put foot first in. And the idea now is a little bit to, change the situation for the southern countries, because they are at the external borders, so especially Greece, Italy, and Spain, and to change the situation a little bit for them. But I think this is just, hot talk, because in the end, there is no real interest in really changing the system. There is no interest in taking in more responsibility, and this has been shown in many different aspects. And the first is obviously by externalizing the border situation. So putting the responsibility to the southern countries, also while knowing that they're economically less stable and less fit to, like they don't have enough resources to do so. And also to add to what Charaf said about how the situation is in Greece right now, about not only the pushbacks, but also it's people, like they make it hard, the regime is making it hard for people to even apply for asylum, like even to give them a chance to show the documents, say I need asylum, I need to stay here, and so on. And this is like this was now, looking at the last years, the next step of this horrific a European asylum policy. In the beginning, it was the infamous German term of Abschottungspolitik. So, like what we know as a fortress Europe. So to build like basically a wall around it, like not a real wall, but trying to through policing and through militarization to protect it in this way, but it's not real protection, to protect the inside. But then they saw, okay, it doesn't really work in this way, and there's also resistance from other member countries such as Poland, Hungary, and the Czech Republic, who refused to take in even some refugees. And now they want already over the borders, beyond the borders, to show to potential migrants, potential asylum seekers, you should not come here. It will be not nice for you. And they do it already at the hotspots, so adding to what Charaf already said, to make it more uncomfortable, more unattractive for people, so they return, or it lasts forever, so they lose hope, or they already do it through campaigns in other countries in the global south. And there was a huge campaign a few years ago in, I'm not quite sure if it's still going on, in Lebanon, for example, through the German exterior ministry, showing in Arabic and huge, like even I think it was a television spot and huge advertisement about how unattractive it is in Germany and people should not come. And it's happening in various other countries. So there's already this idea of, okay, that's not enough to just build this kind of wall around it, but we have already to go actively in these countries through the ministry, through NGOs, through other organizations to keep people, to prevent them from coming, by selling them the idea that it's actually not really nice, and also making the asylum process hard. So adding to that, and also the aspect of how those receiving countries, to say so, like Greece or also around the Balkan area, many other countries are getting more authoritarian and right-wing in their regimes and governments. I don't really see a blue sky, to be honest. I think there has to be a lot of pressure from civil society and rejection of it, and not only by speaking about it, but actually taking action against the own governments, also in supporting arriving people, and either to completely opening the borders or at least to make this process easier, but it will be hard. It will be like a long way.
Instead, countries and institutionalized organizations like Frontex are stepping up their game, so to say, and are enforcing even more authoritarian and the word militarization, and is just I think we named it a couple and times today, but that's what it is. Are doing exactly that with borders. At the same time, as you said, the fortress Europe, there is militarization happening, there is an illegalization happening of people, of helpers, and that all of this is happening through the states and institutions of Europe, also Germany, we have to say it clear and loud right now. At this point, I would like to ask you, as activists, as people being interested in these topics, there are people working in these fields who themselves trying to improve the situation are being criminalized for their work, as it is against law, so to say, and which is not just stopping this process of migration, but also is putting the few people who can use their privilege, their power, their ability to speak in order to change the situation. There are organizations and different kinds working in legal context, working like Sea-Watch and the Mediterranean Sea. Therefore, if we think about, for example, the border protection Frontex, I would like to direct this question to Charaf, but please feel free to speak if you want to. When working right at the border, Charaf, from your experience or from what you can say, speaking to other people and colleagues, the pushback or pressure you feel yourself as of not being able to basically do the work that you want to do due to rights stopping you, like for example, boats and ships being illegalized for helping people who are drowning from drowning. What would you say when working there, when facing these odds?
Yeah, it is frustrating. Like, people are trying to do as much they could do, like to really improve. Like lots of people, they come here with a good desire to change something, to do something, and like our colleagues, they go criminalized in different places, in islands, in Turkey, and also here when you see like how the pushback happened, it's really sad because like when they take somebody from here, they have done nothing. Some people are even documented. This is like the worst thing which happened here. Like I know some people who are with the white card, which is an asylum seeker, and they have been detained for months until their white card expired. After their white card expired, they got pushed back. So they were waiting for their code, like they detained them. They were waiting for their documents to get expired. Then they pushed them back. And in the pushback, like what we have been taking in the like since now 5 or 6 months in every interview that we do, like about Evros, people who are getting pushed back to Turkey, the people who are driving the boats are actually the same people who are getting pushed back. They are using the people, promising them to get paper or wherever, they are promising them money or wherever, and they are using them to violate their people and to treat their people bad. So like this is the last level that you can imagine. It's like using your people against you. So like I really couldn't imagine more than that.
Yes. As Rebecca said before, Rebecca noticed counting, for example, this Sea-Watch and much more organizations which are facing repression on the sea and who are going even on trial because of trying to also get active to allow some people not to die on the sea, for example, or allow people to come in the countries. This is also some of the consequences of borders for people not being able to entering a country without being repressed. And this is the topic that we've had today. And I would like we will come to our last question because the last question from us here, but after that, the audience will be able to ask also questions. We've talked about like this abolishing of these borders, be it the borders in the countries, be it borders in the camp, personal borders. What to do? How would it be possible? Could you maybe say, Doris?
You mean how possible to to abolish?
Yeah, abolish this claim, abolish the borders, abolish the camps.
I mean, for example, like, Women Exile was founded in 2002, and you can imagine from that time till now, not only because it's the campaign of the initiative, but it's the right thing to do. So what I know as a member of Women Exile is that, or what I also understood was, the fight, it's just a matter of, not giving up, fighting, putting more pressure. And also once, depending on the group, or I would not say individual, but I mean, yeah, group. And for example, if you're network with other groups that, fight against, discrimination, racism, in that direction, sexism. So, when more people are, together and, they support other groups, during even the rallies or demos, I think this kind of pressure can do something. And yeah, so, but I just know that we had one success because one camp in Podium was actually closed because we were fighting, and we even sent like a memorandum to the interior minister, and it was like, going the first time and, having these promises and then waiting and then nothing then, but it was like a recurring thing that we were doing till this camp was closed. So that was a step. It was tiny, but it's still huge. So I think, yeah, this keeping on and encouraging, thank goodness we have having supporters, people we call friends in solidarity, that they continue supporting groups and organizations that fight for this.
Thank you. Staying with the same question, Grace, since solidarity is what is necessary in order to change something, and there are different organizations, as we say, locally in cities, nationally in countries, internationally at the borders of Europe and land and at sea. All these different organizations combined are trying what is possible within this framework that is colonial, as we stated, that is authoritarian in its regard to how it deals with laws, how it deals with people, with humans. Therefore, organizations like Women in Exile and other organizations that are trying to help in whatever way, what would you say, what are the different ways people can get active? What are the topics? How can they address it in order to change this militarization and colonial asylum politics at some point in time?
Oh, thank you. First of all, I would like to say that this is very possible, if only that the government can hear us on, for example, like during the first lockdown, it happened that one man took the Landkreis where he comes from to the court, and he was saying that it's not possible to quarantine in the lager because of the space and the so many people. And then in the court of law, the judge went favored on his side and said, yeah, this man should be given accommodation outside the lager. It's possible. So it's possible to close all the lagers because we have the house outside there. And it's very possible. All lager can be closed. Like today, if they said, and we have flats all over, and most of them, they are empty. They don't have people. So it's very possible for this to happen. Only if the government listens to the refugee or to the people involved. The other issue is like the language. It's possible like everyone can go to school only if they are offered the spaces to learn. Because in some lagers, some people even have to wait. Like for me, I waited like for 2 years to enter German class. So you see the time like they waste for the refugee. And people, they are here to stay. I can say this. Because we are not giving up the fight. We are still going to fight for our rights. once you know you are right in this land, then I think it's easy for one to stay, even if you will have to persevere a lot. The other thing is like the deportation. You need like to enlighten the refugee to know their rights. For example, like in Women in Exile, we have the workshop which we invite the lawyers to enlighten the refugee women of the new refugee rules and what are they going to, how they are going to affect them. So it's always good to know what is going to happen because they keep on changing every time, night and day. And in fact, they are very fast to change these things. Once it's being discussed in the parliament, they even start working to make they make it to start working immediately, even if it's in the middle of the night. But in other issues, which like they know they are going to benefit the refugee, they are very, it takes time for them to make them work for the refugee. This is how I can say it, and we have seen it working. So once the lawyers comes and then they enlighten these refugee women, and then they have this knowledge. It's good when they know this, because some of these things they happen, like this deportation. Some of them they should not be taking place, but they just happen because they know you don't know your rights in this land. So once they know you know, they are even scared of you. They don't even come near you. For example, like for me, when I was still in the camp, I was under deportation. But the moment the Ausländerbehörde and the social amt learned that I'm an activist, then it started to change, because they knew, like, now I know my rights, I'm enlightened, and I know, like, the process. And also, it's good always, like, to take the privileged people. So, like, you take the German with you where you are going. Like, if you are going to face the Ausländer or the social amt, it's always good because, and this is why we have friends in our group. These are the people who helps women. In case, like, you need the translation, you are being invited at the Ausländerbehörde, you don't know what is there or what is waiting for you. But once you go there with the privileged people, the Germans, then they will also, like, they will be scared of you. And even if, like, they wanted to do something to you, they will start, first they will start, they will stop it a bit. And then you have time to know, to negotiate, or to know what you are going to do, or your next move. And these also help in buying time and prolonging your stay here, as I can say it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. The empowerment of refugees. Would you like to add onto that question, Dimitra, of what is there to be done? What are the possibilities before we give to Charaf?
Yeah, just one point. I was trying to think how to choose one aspect maybe to tell from many, and I think it's not an easy question, and we probably could speak about it for hours, but I would also agree that one part of it at least should be the empowerment of people and spreading the knowledge so they know their rights, they know they have this information. But I think also that the majority of people should think outside of the so-called box, and also understand a little bit that there is no really reliance on the political elite. You cannot sit at home and wait for some representatives, so-called representatives in the parliament to make those kind of decisions and to make this kind of changes because they want. And this has been also shown historically, either in Germany or any other country, that there are always economic or certain interests that will not change, and as long as we live in this kind of capitalist order that we live, and that one class is ruled by the other, then it will not change. And to highlight one issue, since there's certain statistics, and it's not always all of them reliable, but they are quite close to, you know, like the actual numbers, and there have been since the year 2000, so it's now 21 years, it's like a third of a lifetime, an estimated 20,000 people have drowned in the Mediterranean Sea. And it's around 1,000 people each year, which is a lot, and it's horrible to know, and a lot of them were children, a lot of them were babies, and a lot of them were women. And we cannot wait for anyone in the political elite to change that. And we have to take action ourselves in different forms, either local, regional, national, international, and understand what the systemic oppression behind that means, what it means if we stay silent and accidentally stay on the oppressor's side by being silent, and instead trying to change a system that's and try to abolish a system that's not changeable, and it won't bring back those lives, but we have to do something against it that's, you know, hindering people to either cross the border physically or in any other form, but also we have to stop the Mediterranean being a graveyard of souls as it is continued right now. That's unacceptable.
Charaf, I am happy that you're back. And Dimitra just said, not wait for the system. Take the power ourselves and try to go against the system. What would you add to that question? What can we do, or what can be done against this repression?
Actually, maybe I would jump a bit further. Like, I think what would change the situation really is to make the voice of those people heard somehow, because mostly who is talking for refugees, let's say, are mostly NGOs whose lots of them are as a companies now are like making kind of business. And I will go through now like some thoughts and some phrases from all the people. Like, before I wanted to attend this conference, I asked some friends and some people who are working with me, and I got some ideas from them, and they would like to say it. So there is nothing wrong with volunteering abroad as long as you don't present yourself as a hero. And this is about like volunteerism and volunteerism issues and the right meaning of volunteerism. There is a lot of people actually on the move are doing like the best and working to improve their situation. If you think that food and water and tent is all what people need, actually it's not, because it's basic human rights, and there is no freedom without those basics. The slavery back days was by taking off such basic human rights like this. So you would lose your freedom if somebody takes your food, water, and shelter. It make it hard for you to access. Like, I think everyone should ask themselves, like, why and how I'm privileged. Why it's easy for me to travel and other people are not allowed. Am I benefiting from the colonies of my country? How? Why I'm gonna do this volunteering work? Is feeling guilty from being white or privileged are good reasons to do volunteering work? Shouldn't I disagree with the organization that I'm working for if I see something wrong? Are NGOs founders qualified, or they are just the best to be in charge, or it's just because they have power and privilege? I think everyone, you people, should know about the NGOs work, because you are the donors, you are the exploited migrants people in the name of humanity, and you are the volunteers who are doing this work.
White saviorism. That is an intention that is meant in a good way, but is turned into something else. What you just named, Charaf, which is an important aspect of activism, and brings us back to also the topic of this festival of reflecting your position in society, and not just reflecting it upon it, but rather changing that knowledge that you hopefully acquired into action, and also not by yourself, but in solidarity with the people concerned. Solidarity means organizing. I'm just trying to summarize what you said without trying to say everything, as it was a lot and important, but empowerment processes and migrants, refugees, as well as white people, even though you might not be directly and individually struck and influenced by migration, by these laws, by racism, it does still mean that you are a very a big element in that very system, since we are talking about a system that has been created by white hegemony. So, as a last word before getting back to you, the audience, taking your position, using your power, not just you, but everybody, in order to change. Please do.
Yeah, I wanted to add one small thing, because I wanted to say it all the time and I forgot. Because we were speaking generally about the EU, it's, as a political and hegemonic power, but I think it's also important to see it from the regional, to say so, perspective that we are, and at least the people here live in Germany, and I myself live in Germany, and I'm not from here, but I live in Germany, and it's a very specific situation that we are, and not all the countries have the same position economically and politically, and there are differences, even if it doesn't seem like that sometimes. But especially for the German context, also the German audience, to understand also from the politics of interior, but also exterior, that we live in a time of post-fascism in Germany, and a lot of people don't understand and don't recognize it or don't acknowledge it, what it actually means. Not only in terms of the basically colonial past, but also the fascist and also national socialist past, and how it also reflects on certain politics, especially concerning border, concerning construction of race and so on, and how, to be honest, to say it very, very directly, how Germany is living its wet dreams through the externalized borders, by sending German military to Frontex, by sending German, from Bavaria actually, police to Athens, for example, to Greece, to the airports in Southeast European countries and so on. So it doesn't diminish their role in the system, but we have to look into how does this form of imperialism works in this area and also to the outside. So not only the far global south, but directly at the externalized borders.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We talked for a lot of minutes, and now it is your chance to ask what you think, what do you have in your mind on the very topic of today, militarization of the EU borders and the asylum political system. You will just have to shout your question out loud, and then we are going to use the microphone to repeat it for the people live streaming. Yes, please.
documentation of people being mistreated or their rights not being seen. And also there's been so many scandals about Frontex, like in the general German press as well, like big media has covered it, Spiegel, Stern, I don't know. And even now, since we do have these documentations, we do have the evidence that this is happening, still there's nothing really changing. Like the assigned courts are not, I don't know, are not really following up. I don't feel like perpetrators are being really taken into account or being punished. And I was wondering a lot how there can be more political pressure or pressure on the courts concerning especially pushbacks.
I will repeat the question as well as I can. So the necessity of documenting pushbacks and the illegal and inhumane politics happening at the borders was pointed out today, but also there is knowledge about it in media, there is journalism that is working on it. At the same time, not much is being done. And we're facing these situations for much too long. So, Charaf, I think this question was concerning you. What can be done in order to give it more awareness, more public knowledge?
Yeah, this is actually the thing that I want to talk about. We are a bit frustrated, like we don't see much changing, and like the main thing for me documenting these interviews and reporting everything is, like personally, if I would change just one person, how I would spread awareness through these reports and through what people are experiencing is everything. It means a lot for me and for the whole team, I think. The main idea is spreading awareness and awareing people of the situation here through these reports. So through this conference, I would invite everybody who's attending this conference to check our website, to have a look. Maybe some people already did, and it would be just good to have an idea about what people are experiencing in like the Balkan route to get to Europe. And yeah, thank you so much.
Yes, please. Next question for you, Charaf. White saviorism is something that white people are facing in Germany, but also working, for example, at the EU borders in Greece, as where you are. And the question is, what difference does it make for a white person to basically apply white saviorism, being either in Germany or at the border? If I got your question correct.
I think
no. Okay.
I think it's more of which difference does it make if a white person accompanies someone, a refugee, uses their privilege to accompany a refugee, for example, to Ausländerbehörde, to the migration officers, and which is the difference now for white people to use their privilege on the sea to help people. So the concept, what you were explaining, was not really well understood. Your explanation about the white privilegism on the sea was not really fully understood. Would you maybe please explain it again? Charaf?
Yes?
Yes, the question was towards you.
I didn't get it really. Like, Rebecca was saying something and you just said something else. Can you just repeat it and summarize it? I would be happy to respond.
Yeah, the concept of white saviorism on the sea was not well understood. Would you maybe explain again?
Okay, so like in general, voluntarism is just limited, is just in general mostly is for white people. Like other people from other continents are not really, they don't have the access or they don't really know how to apply for voluntarism. Like they don't have privilege, they don't have enough money to do it, and they don't have enough information about it. So it's mostly we see like people from the US, people from Europe doing that. This is a problem. This is like, first of all, this is a problem. Like, and no one is volunteers. People who are doing that are not who is causing it, but everyone's still responsible about doing something and make it accessible for everyone to do voluntarism. Secondly, I would say like those people we know like all refugees here are facing problems, but actually you can come here to like it depends on your desires. So you could cause harm more than making good for them in a ways. So and also about qualification. There are so many people, like people on the move that I know, they are qualified, but they cannot do, like have a job with such NGOs just because they are undocumented. They are, you know, so like here is like the privilege thing applied. Like only those people, like privileged people can do that even though they are not qualified to do it. So sometimes you would find in Africa or like, well, I never seen it here, to be fair. But in Africa, you'd find some people who don't know anything about, who are not doctors, but they are treating babies. They are treating women, you know, pregnant women, which is super problematic. That's what I meant in general. Like, and it's just good to talk about it. I think it's healthy for white people to talk about that, because feeling guilt and feeling ashamed is not the thing that gonna improve the situation, or just to get rid of this shame is talking about it and spreading awareness and getting educated how you can be a good volunteer, how you can be really helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Charaf. We have a next question. question is, who are those people at the top? Who are these people benefiting of the current system that we're living in, who are governing the things that we are basically criticizing at an institutional and structural level, and breaking it down to what it actually is, if we want to name it? Everybody can answer. Just putting it into the field again, the ball into the field. But please feel free, Charaf, if you want to.
Okay, I will maybe try, unless you want.
I can try on this one. For example, like the Lager system, this is a pure business, I can say this. And this is why it's very hard for the people to shut down the Lager, because we have some people benefiting from this by renting this to the government. So you see, somehow someone is benefiting. So this makes this fight also very difficult to fight. And we have these people like providing the utility, like day-in things, like the toilet paper, the soaps, and everything. So we have people bringing all these things to the Lager. So when I say business, I also mean these people. So we have a lot of people benefiting from this Lager system. Yeah, I can say this.
Yeah, also to add another point that also might be helpful, I don't know, is when looking into certain organizations, like we talked already a lot about Frontex, and there is the idea, I don't know where it comes from, I don't know, media representation, that it's actually a European Union organization, and it's not, it's a French company. It's a private French company where the French state also owns a lot of shares in it, and it's used to, you know, at the externalized borders, also with the help of other countries that finance it, like either giving in money or also sending soldiers or other resources. But in the end, it's not like a governmental institution, not that it would make their work less horrible, but it's not a governmental institution, it's a private company. And when you look also into the trainings where all those either soldiers or you know, anyone who is used there for militarizing and policing at the hotspots or at the borders, there's always a company behind it. So Moria, for example, the biggest, you could say Lager, or the biggest camp hotspot in Europe right now, in the European Union, on the island of Mytilene in Greece, is also the security that they have there are from private companies. And it doesn't mean that only this, you know, the ones that we mentioned right now are leading to you know, the political arena taking these decisions, but the greater image behind it is to, you know, keep the world political order as it is now. And when maintaining and sustaining the political order, also the economic order is sustained. And what I tried to mention earlier, I don't know if it was understood well, but basically one of the ideas, or one of the goals, is to keep, you know, the natural, to get into the natural resources, to get into the labor from other countries, but accumulating it in here. And in the end, when we look into who profits from it, it's obviously the political elite, because they make their entire careers on it. But not only them, it's actually all of us. We benefit from other people being exploited in other places. And this is what has to change. And then again, to add more complexity into it, you have also class struggles in Germany. Not everyone here is rich. Not everyone here, you know, has an apartment. There's a lot of homelessness. There are a lot of, even among the non-migrant, non-refugees, a lot of poverty, even if people don't think about it. But when we consider what kind of rich country we are, it's horrible to see the poverty and the homelessness. So in the end, what has to change, obviously, is the economic system as it is. There's no way around it. We can fight for liberty as much as we want, but if there's no large wealth distribution around the world. I personally don't think anything will change in the near future, but this will be like a long fight. It won't be, for free. It won't be fast, and it will take a lot. And we saw the smaller, to say so, like compared to other repressions, it was not that big, but we saw the kind of repressions and also the racist wording when it came to the European Union economic crisis a few years ago. That was the way it was talked about the southern countries, that they are, they cannot manage the economies, they only spend money on booze and women, which was also a colonial phrase, to be honest. This is what was mentioned about, people in South America. They're poor because they don't know how to manage, and they need the white Europeans to come and save them. And the same wording was used in the European economic crisis. So we see that when it comes to money and when it comes to economic and political wealth distribution, it's very clear who stands on which side. And then relying on, the party system and the parliament system as we know it, I don't really think it's gonna change anything. So class politics are important, class struggle is important, and showing solidarity around the world.
Thank you very much. We've got out of time. So I would like to thank you all. I thank you, Doris, thank you, Grace, thank you, Dimitria, and thank you, Charaf. And thank you all who are here today. Thank you also to the people who are looking at watching us now. And thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you
for doing this with me. And yes, thank you for the great discussion.
Can we say as the last word, maybe to sum it up, let's break the system? Is that a way of maybe ending this discussion?
Before we wind up, I will leave you with a question. You have heard the stories, what goes on in the lager. I would like to leave this question to the Germans, the most privileged people in these rooms, or the people from the EU. What have you done to change or to improve the life of a refugee woman? That's my question to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just organizational, the White People Festival will continue until tomorrow. There are different events taking place all over the city. The Helfer, for example, today, there's a keynote on the decolonization of Europe by Fatima El Tayeb, starting in 20 minutes. Also live, people out there. And yes, continue getting to inform yourself and organize and be active.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.